بين جبال المكسيك وأزقة إسطنبول القديمة. رحلة غريبة بدأت بإنكار الخالق وانتهت في محراب الصلاة. بروفيسور جامعي قضى عمره في البحث بين الأديان ليجد نفسه فجأة يقف بين المصلين في المسجد الأزرق دون سابق إنذار. كيف تحول الإلحاد إلى سكينة؟ وما الذي حدث داخل تلك الغرفة السرية لينطق بالشهادة ويغير اسمه إلى سليمان؟
I am going to tell you a little bit about my story and my experience with Islam. And I grew up a Christian. I was baptized as a Christian when I was in my early 20s. When I was an undergrad, I took enough sociology and religion classes to decide that I was in fact an atheist. And that felt like a really, really good decision. And then when I was 26, I was in the mountains in Mexico in an area where shamans, where people use ayahuasca and hongos, hallucinogenic psilocybin mushrooms. And this gentleman asked me if I wanted to have mushrooms, and I said, well, of course. And so I did, and that was the moment that I actually experienced God. Whatever God is, and the experience I had, it's not what I was taught when I was going to my Methodist church. It was a very, let me just say I was no longer an atheist. But I didn't know what it meant. You know, what I experienced was not what so many people, believers of God around me, thought. Like, my thoughts were still very, very different, but I saw something that was really magical about the world. So I continued on with my life and didn't adopt any particular religion at all. Didn't feel inclined to. And it just had lots of what I thought were awesome experiences. I worked with the Catholic Church in Ecuador. That's where I did my PhD research. So I spent a lot of time in the insides of the Catholic Church, met some just really amazing people. And then I took a trip to Israel. And I stayed with the family of a former student of mine. I went with him, and they were Orthodox, living in Jerusalem, very Orthodox. So I had the whole Orthodox experience for 2 separate weekends, living with this Orthodox family. Just how awesome of an opportunity that was for me, just to have those experiences and engaging them, and lots of really just cool experiences, right? But I also engaged Islam in a direct way for the first time. Well, I had had many experiences as a young man, Muslim friends, and had been to a mosque here in the United States and so on. This was the first time I really engaged Islam. So I went to Palestine. So I go from Jerusalem, from Israel to Palestine, and I got comfortable just sort of going back and forth and referring in different ways and just learning how to talk. And, one day I remember being at the Western Wall, and if you know anything about, we'll come back. We'll talk about Judaism later in the course, but this is one of the most holy places in Judaism, if not the single most holy place, because it's the wall that's still standing from the temple that was built by King Herod, and before the birth of Christ. And right behind it is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that's the third most important, holiest place for Muslims in the world. And so, I went one day, I'm here at the wall, praying at the wall, and then I go to Al-Aqsa Mosque and pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And then later, the next day, I went and touched the tomb of Jesus. 2 different tombs, by the way, in Jerusalem. I wasn't sure which one was the real tomb, but for one, I had to pay $2. To touch it, which I thought, WWJP, what would Jesus pay? But I met Muslims for the first time, really met Muslims, and was just blown away by, just as I was with Jews and the Jewish people with whom I was in contact and I engaged, and I was struck by the generosity. Same with Muslims. A few years later, I went to Turkey, and this is the Blue Mosque. I mean, I was just there actually again in December, but this is just, you just can't even imagine the grandeur and the beauty of this place. And I stayed right across the street from it, and it was just really an experience of being in a fully Muslim country and having lots of experiences that were One that was I was meditating in the Blue Mosque, and this is the inside of the Blue Mosque. And I didn't realize that people were lining up behind me. And you line up standing next to each other. Maybe later in the semester we'll do it. We'll talk about it. But so then I was deep in meditation, and I felt somebody tap me on the shoulder. And this person said, hey, line up. And so I couldn't leave at that point because I was surrounded by people who were preparing for the midday prayer. And so I just said, okay. And so I stood next to them and I said, here I go. I'm going to pray as Muslims pray. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to just follow what everybody else is doing, and I'm going to do it. And it was just an awesome experience. And when I got finished, I felt that was really cool. And so I went that evening, or the next morning, I met a gentleman. Or no, that evening I went to seek out Sufis, and Sufism is like a spiritual, very highly spiritual, ethereal sort of way of seeing Islam. And Sufis they're the ones that do the whirling dervishes, right? They pray, and sometimes you see them, and one hand is pointed down toward the earth and the other toward God, and they wear a big cap that represents their own tombstone. And the goal of Sufis is to destroy the ego, which is the goal of all religions. And then they twirl really fast, and they go into a trance-like state. But it turns out I knew it was sort of a theatrical thing. So I met this old man on the street, and he turned out he was a religious scholar. And I told him I was on a quest to meet real Sufis. And he said, meet me here tonight at 5 o'clock, and I'll take you there. And so at 5 o'clock, I jumped in a cab with this man, and we sped through the streets of Istanbul, and we got to Old Town, Istanbul, and we get out, and we go into this house, and I go up these steps in this really old building, and basically I'm walking in a circle like this, because it's just these circular steps, and I walk, and I walk, and I walk, and we get to the top, and there's a door. And he knocks on the door, and we walk in, and there's a gentleman sitting right directly in front of us, and he's introduced me. And now this gentleman didn't speak English, and I didn't speak either Turkish or Arabic. So I sat down in front of him. Now he's sitting there, and I'm sitting here, and we can't talk to each other, but we're sharing energy. And this man is just powerful. And I'm feeling all the love and the connection, and I'm sending love and connection. And we had this just awesome experience of connection. It lasted about an hour, and it turns out that we spent most of that hour just giggling because we were connected as two souls. And so he says, repeat after me. And the old guy who spoke some English said, hey, he wants you to repeat after him. I didn't know what he's saying, but I knew that's what he was saying. So I did, and now he switches to Arabic. And I say what he tells me to say, and then we said it again. And basically what I said was, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. And that's what you have to say to become a Muslim, fundamentally. And I said, and so when he finished, he said, okay. And he gave me the name Süleyman, and that's my Muslim name. And he said, now you are a Muslim. And I said, awesome, I'm a Muslim. I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Buddhist. I spent time in a Buddhist monastery. I'm an atheist. But now I get to be a Muslim. So that was awesome. He tells me that I have to give up any belief I have in evolution, which meant, okay, I'm not really a Muslim because I can't give that up. But nonetheless, it was good. The next night I come back, by the way, so here's his photo. This is him. The next night I come back and they share a dinner with me with all of his team. We had a sema. And that's a ceremony for Sufis. And the most magical experience of life, it's just the love and the connection. You just can't even hardly imagine it. So, since that time, I've had many opportunities to connect with Islam all around the world. I've traveled to, I think, 6 or 7 primarily Islamic countries. A couple of them, I was in Qatar 10 times, I think, in the Emirates 3 times. I've been in Turkey a few times. And, here I am with the Ministry of Higher Education and from Pakistan, right? The team. We were doing some work together, and here, this is Lori here with a team of students we were working with in Doha, in Qatar. These are Qatari students. That's me with the Queen. This is me with the Queen of Qatar, Sheikha Mossa. So I've had lots of opportunities to really engage at multiple levels. This is our team. This is our Afghan team. This is Rafi, my Afghan partner. This is Hasib, the second partner. Some of you probably have met Hasib. Some of you have probably met Maliha if you've had Afghan dialogues. So these are all students we were meeting in New Delhi. These are all students, people from Afghanistan. They're all Muslims.
Wow, beautiful video, guys. Amazing. But I wish the man could have, deliberated more on Islam, explained more on Islam, because it seems as if he was, deviating. We talk about Islam for like 5 seconds, talk about Christianity for like 20 seconds. So he spoke more on other religion than Islam. Yeah, he should have gone straight to explaining how he experienced God well in Islam before giving us his background history. Yeah, it's good to give us background history of Christianity, just briefly. Then go into the explanation for how he explains God in Islam. They may be close to the ending of the video. You can just chip in into Christian. So I don't know. It was a beautiful story, but I don't know. The man did not, arrange his story accordingly. But that was a beautiful one. That was an amazing one. One thing I know about Professor is that they love to, try out new things. Most professors do want to try out new things because of they are good in research. They are good in, that's their field. They are very good in researching things. So I'm sure he did a lot of research about Islam. Then he tried to experience it himself and use it to compare Christianity. Well, that's a beautiful video. Let me know your point of view, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
الحقيقة ليست مجرد كلمات تقرأ، بل هي روح تلمس وقلب يطمئن. فلا تنسوا الإعجاب بالفيديو والاشتراك في قناة فيرا لتصلكم المزيد من قصص المهتدين وتجاربهم الحقيقية حول العالم.